welcome to Studio Sports on YouTube. Cody, I'm joined by Jason, and we plan to just kind of come on here and talk about the state of the Oklahoma basketball program after their loss last night to Oklahoma State. Um, and we don't want to spend too much time talking about this season in general. We want to spend more time talking about the future. However, just to kind of touch on this season, wasn't a great season. Oklahoma was 15-16 overall, and 5-13 in
15 and 17 after last night, right?
I guess, but that's a postseason. So
Yeah.
15-17, quad one, they were 6-13. So, yeah, just not the best season at all. I think things have to change, but yeah, it was just a frustrating season in general.
Yeah, I mean, looking back on this season, when the season first started, there was, especially after their foreign trip in Spain and stuff, I just kind of, after seeing some of these guys play, thought it was going to be a really pretty decent year for sure. I think any OU fan for sure thought they would make the NCAA tournament. That's kind of like the bar. They thought the lowest bar would be, let's make the tournament. And I think everybody thought that. And, with the guys they brought in, let's just be honest and say what it is. Grant Sherfield, they brought him in to be the scorer, and he did great up until Big 12 play. Yeah. Once the schedule got tough and the Big 12 happened, Grant Sherfield just didn't perform consistently on a consistent basis. And then you look at a guy like Tanner Groves, in all honesty, I think he's playing out of position. Obviously, he's not a 5. He's better at a 4. Yeah. And, so in all fairness to him, but he is what he is. Tanner Groves is Tanner Groves. They got what they could out of him, but he wasn't going to do any better. He was very inconsistent. That's the thing about this team. Look at who came back. Tanner Groves, Jalen Hill. You had Sherfield coming in. We all knew Uzan and Owe were really talented, right?
Yeah, but
the guys go ahead.
With Uzan and Owe, we didn't know that they were going to produce the way they produced at the end of the year. You look like the Kansas State game, they both had career high points in 20 for Uzan and 18 for Owe.
Yeah, there's a few. Yeah, you're right. I didn't. No one thought as true freshmen that they would perform that well, which they did, which is huge for the future. Yeah. Obviously the biggest disappointments to me for the season were Sherfield and Big 12 play. It just wasn't there. And then Joe Bamisile, whatever reason, I don't know. I'm not the coach. I don't know if it's Porter, something with Bamisile. He had flashes where he performed well, but also, I don't know why. He's probably the most athletic guy on the team, in all honesty. And he just didn't get a whole lot of playing time, and they were counting on him. I remember I even talked to you, Brody, in the offseason when they signed him out of the portal. We were both really excited about him, and just didn't pan out. For whatever reason. Cortez had a decent year. Jacob Groves, he is what he is again there.
Came on late, but still the stretch that he had to begin conference play or the middle of conference play was not good.
No.
And then another thing you're talking about this team that hasn't been mentioned yet is we talked about Tanner Groves. Well, Tanner Groves comes out of the game and you're playing a walk-on. Sam Godwin, and to him, I was impressed with what Sam Godwin did as a walk-on. But it's a walk-on. Sam Godwin is a good big. He's, in my opinion, not a Big 12 big. And it's nothing against him. He just doesn't have the athleticism. And it's not just Sam Godwin that doesn't have the athleticism. In my opinion, it was the whole team that didn't have the athleticism.
Yeah, and that's right. It's athleticism. And when you look at this team, when they got in Big 12 play, the inconsistency from everybody. I'm not just going to mention a few names. It was the whole team. Uzan had a stretch there where he struggled. He's obviously a true freshman. But when they got into that tough competition, it's like they would have a good game, but they weren't. And I don't know, they weren't good enough to be consistent, if that makes sense. They would have a game, just like a guy could have a game and get hot. But consistently, Grant Sherfield, I was kind of disappointed in his shot creating ability. And as far as knocking down shots off the dribble, he really struggled in Big 12 play on that.
Well, and the thing with Sherfield's game is that when you have him at Nevada or you saw it in non-conference play, he takes a lot of really tough shots. And those tough shots, they're either going to fall or they're not. And last night, they were not falling at all. And when you take as many tough shots as you do and play in the league that you play in, I mean, you're not going to be too efficient shooting wise, taking those shots. So yeah, like you mentioned, his shot creation just wasn't there. But yeah, I mean, just a frustrating year. And I think, in my opinion, to kind of talk about Porter Moser, I know there's been a lot of people who have criticized him, and rightfully so. They haven't been good these past 2 years. But I think the next 1 to 2 months is going to shape how Porter Moser or how his career is at Oklahoma. And I think he has a third year, and he has to do good this year. And specifically, he has to do good in the portal upcoming.
Yeah, you're right. And nobody, I mean, you ask any OU fan when they hired Porter Moser, if you would have told the OU fans that he's been there 2 years and not made the NCAA tournament, people would have been like, I don't see that happening. They're going to at least make the tournament. And that's what's disappointing. You know, they finished dead last in the Big 12 this year. I mean, dead last. That's unacceptable at Oklahoma University. That's unacceptable. But here's the deal. I'm gonna shove that to the side for a second, because I mean, I have been on Moser, but I've also been a fan of Moser. So I'm looking towards the future. And without talking about the portal at all, okay, the question I'm going to ask you is the biggest need for OU. I'm going to tell you mine, and I want to know yours. But right now, you got the bright future right now is Uzan and Oweh, okay? Freshman, wait. Freshman, okay? Those are, I mean, I would say Oweh, I would call him a 3, probably.
3. Yeah.
Okay. But what they have coming in are 2 top 100 forwards. Okay.
Yeah. And speaking on those 2 top 100 forwards, Caden Cooper, he's a 3, but he can also be a 2 at 6'6". I think he had one game where he had 20 points and 26 rebounds or something like that. He's very talented. His shot from 3 needs to be a tiny bit better, but we talked about it. They didn't have the athleticism. Caden Cooper is athleticism, defense. He's long. And so he's going to come in and make an impact immediately. Cooper is the highest rated recruit they've brought in since Trae Young, and he's in state, which is a big thing. It was between Oklahoma and Alabama. So bringing him isn't huge. I think he'll come in and contribute from day one. Just because him and Oweh will be really good defensively, really good, because they're both athletic. And that's one thing this team really didn't have this year. And then Jacob Cole, he played for Link Prep. And for those who don't know, Link Prep is probably one of the best high school teams out there. He didn't start because that team is full of 5-stars. I think the top 5 player for the 2024 class, Elliot Cadeau, is on that team. So, I mean, he's played in a lot of big games. They played in the Geico National Championship, I think, a couple weeks ago. So he's played in a lot of big games. He did miss the start of the season because he tore his ACL. I think ACL. But he's back, and he got minutes late in the game. Now he's I think a little bit bigger at he might be 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" maybe. But he's not done growing. He's pretty tall, lengthy. He can play the 4. I think that's where Oklahoma would most need him at. 4, he can shoot, he can stretch the floor, and he's athletic. So, yeah, 2 really good signings that they brought in.
And so that kind of leads me to what I was going to say as far as the biggest need for this team. And you have to, if you're Porter Moser, you have to go get 2 things out of the portal. They're must-haves, in my opinion. One, you have to go get a 5, a true 5 that's athletic. Okay, that's one. The other one, you have to go get a sharpshooter, somebody that can light it up from 3-point line, because you got Uzan that can create. But right now, we even saw this year, the guy was Sherfield to be the shooter. His percentage, they need a true 3-point shooter.
Scorer that is a great 3-point shooter.
Great shooter.
And the good news, there's going to be a good amount of that in the transfer portal with how talented the transfer portal is going to be. And I think they'll lose a couple guys. I think they'll lose, in my opinion, I think obviously Tanner Groves, Grant Sherfield, and then I think Jalen Hill is going to leave. I think he'll take the Brady Manick route and look to transfer to a bigger school where there's a better chance of going in the long run.
I agree.
And, in that case, it leaves you with probably right now, Uzan and Oweh is the only ones I would look at right now and say they'll probably start next year.
What do you think about Bamisill? You think he sticks around or moves on?
I don't know. It's going to be tough for him to transfer again because, the waiver thing with him lasted a while in the summer because he's transferred from Virginia Tech to George Washington, now Oklahoma. So him transferring.
Well, and he could play. He could be a big part of this team. I just
Yeah,
I mean, he's athletic enough and he can score. He's not a great shooter, but it doesn't matter. He can score and create. So maybe he has a great offseason, and maybe Porter is able to develop him because they got Cortez as a backup point guard, obviously.
Cortez impressed me this year.
He impressed me a lot this year. I don't know about CJ Nolan. I don't know about him.
No. CJ Nolan, I'd be shocked if he's in an Oklahoma uniform next year.
Really, yeah.
And I think he's a really talented player, and it sucks that it didn't work out at Oklahoma because he could have been potentially a really, really good player. He'll probably go somewhere else. I don't know where, but I would be shocked if he's back.
And you think Jacob leaves?
The more I think about it, the more I do think he leaves. I mean, I could see him going to play with his brother somewhere, whether it be overseas. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. And he could come around for another year with that COVID year, but I don't know. I don't think he transfers.
Tanner. I saw somebody on Twitter today talking about Tanner, how he just fits that overseas role really well. He's going to make some money over there. But here's so
the portal is where they have to succeed. They have to, like we mentioned, they have to get a scoring guard. They have to get in a big man, athletic big man. And I think they need to bring in 2 guards to the portal, maybe even 3. They need to attack the portal and something. You have Benny Schroeder and Luke Norweather.
That's what I was going to say. Is Norweather's a great pick and pop guy?
Norweather
is a true 5.
He is a true 5. He's a 7-footer. The thing with him is he just needs to be a little bit more quicker. But Norweather, he honestly, you look at
4-star guy,
3-star,
3-star,
Gatorade Player of the Year in Missouri. You look at Kansas roster, Zach Clements. I mean, he's played some. That's probably the biggest role I see him in. Maybe not the second big off the bench next year, but the third, and then he could come in and pick and pop, see if he can hit some shots. I don't know. I mean, they might have something with him there. They redshirted him.
And we don't know anything about him. He could be a really good player already, and we just
and he made some improvements, and I think. And then another one is Benny Schroeder. Benny Schroeder, in my opinion, has just as much potential as any freshman that they brought in last year. And then he missed summer with an injury, and then beginning of the year he got another injury, so he's been out. But then he played a couple of games in like not really meaningful time, but I do think he has potential. He's a good mid-range shot. Don't know what you'll have out of him. He's kind of one that's the unknown wild card. You don't know what you'll get. If you can have him as like a 10th, 11th man next year, and maybe you get something out of him, I think that'd be good. But then another person that played in just the exhibition game this year, Yaya Keita. He came in from Missouri, played pretty good minutes at Missouri, missed it. He had to have surgery on his shin. So maybe he leaves. I don't know. I don't know what the situation is going to be with him. They brought him in kind of to be the backup center this year, and then he got hurt, and he didn't play in the foreign tour, which opened it up to Sam Godwin, who took the role and ran with it. So I don't know what to get with him either, whether he transfers or stays.
Yeah, that's the thing. Looking at this team going forward next year, you're only talking 2 or 3 guys that you know a whole lot about. So it's going to be a big roster change. And another thing is my probably biggest concern about this team is now we've seen how Porter Moser has done with high school recruiting. I think you can compare him to some past OU coaches. His high school recruiting has been good.
He's a very good high school recruiter.
But the portal, and I don't know if it's just, and I'm just spitballing here, but as guards, is he a guy that you really, as a shooting guard, is he a guy you really want to play for, or is there other places that you'd look probably to go?
I don't know. And the thing that Oklahoma has going for them is they play in the best conference in college basketball. And who wouldn't want to go play in the Big 12? You talked about that, and I think Jeremy and others have mentioned it on this pod is, he's not going to let guys take shots. Guys, Grant Sherfield shot awful last night, and he took a lot of shots. So the whole thing of I don't know if Moser will let them shoot is one thing. I would like to see him make changes to the offense, more transition, less slowing it down if they want to be their best next year. And I think just having
but you got to have guys that can do that too.
And that's the thing. And I think one of the things that will help them is if, we talked about maybe Sherfield's leaving. I think he's leaving. I think Hill's leaving, and Groves is obviously leaving. I think that's going to help them in the portal because you look at it last year, and I want to make sure everyone understands this, no big-time big man was going to come and play for Oklahoma last year because the starting center was already sharpied in last year. So them not having where you can be a big man and say, hey, I can go start at center on a team in the best conference in college basketball. So I think that will help them.
Mm-hmm.
The portal is going to be what next year's season comes down to. Because right now you look at the guys on this roster that I think will have a big role next season. There's a couple maybes. The three right now is Uzan, Owe, and Cortez for me. And again, that's because I don't think Sherfield Hill and them are coming back.
Maybe Bamisile.
Bamisile's a maybe. I wouldn't put him in with those three. And then I think Caden Cooper has a role. Jacob Cole is another wild card. You got a lot of, we mentioned Benny Schroeder, Norweather, Bamisile. Those are kind of guys you don't know what you're going to get about. Well, you need to go in the portal and get someone that you know what you're going to get. And one of the things is people are like, well, they're going to have to rebuild the whole roster next year. We've seen teams, Kansas State.
Basketball can be done.
In a couple of years ago, that's not a situation you want to be in. But now it's not a bad situation. There's going to be so much talent in the transfer portal. So I'd like to see them get 2 to 3 guards. I would say 2, and then 2 big men. 4 people I'd bring in 4 players.
So when do we start seeing names hit portal? I mean, I know.
Well, there's been some names that have already hit the portal. I mean, there's a couple guys out there. Fardaws Aimaq for Texas Tech and Texas Tech.
I did see he entered the portal. So basically, when the season's over, you can enter. He would be a great 5.
It's not official until the 13th. And I don't think
he'd be a great 5, would he not?
He did pursue Aimaq last year, but I don't think – I mean, he's going to have much bigger suitors, and he's not the most athletic. I don't think that's going to be the guy that Oklahoma goes after. But, I mean, there's a couple just studs in the portal right now, and there's a kid from Lamar. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, freshman. He averaged like 17 points. He's getting big-time interest. So there's already some really good players. I've heard a couple things about some players wanting to go play Oklahoma. I know Oklahoma has been in contact with the 4 from, I think it's Chris Ledlam from Harvard. They've been in contact with him. There's been a guard they've been in contact with. But you're going to see it over the next couple of weeks once all these tournaments end. You're going to see the portal. It officially opens the 13th, which is next Monday, I think. But you're going to see the portal start to ramp up then, and you got to get on it if you're Moser, because I think it all comes down to –
You got to get on it early and get them.
Yes, you got to get them. You got to lock them.
Can't wait around for people. So before we kind of close this up, I think I'd like to do like a report card for the year.
Yeah.
So let's just start off first with Porter Moser, Brody. Report card, what grade would you give him for the year?
C-.
Okay, I was gonna say D. I mean, I don't think anybody can give him better than that just because they didn't make the tournament and they finished last in the Big 12. To me,
a lot of people will give him an F, and rightfully so. The reason I give him a C- is because they played in the toughest conference in basketball. It was never going to be easy. They probably had the worst team in the Big 12.
Where were they projected? 7?
7 or 8. They probably had – and guess who was predicted 10th? Kansas State. So
I would give him a D, and I could see the F because of the close losses that really killed their season. And that a lot of it is on coaching as far as putting guys in at the right time, substitution patterns, getting guys to play at their best ability. So I mean, we saw CJ Nolan in and out, didn't really get rhythm at all.
He couldn't stay on the court.
Well, I know, but that
was on him.
Porter Moser. Part of that's Porter Moser.
Yeah,
so it was a bad year for Porter. I mean, let's just be honest. So,
I mean, in the rotation, you didn't know what it was going to be night in and night out. I mean, it could change drastically. So
what about players? As far as I don't want to go through every player, but what player do you think graded out the highest this year?
Milos Uzan, and I don't even have to think about that question.
I agree with you. I would say Uzan.
I would give Uzan an A+ for his season.
Yeah, I would too as a freshman. Probably the worst. I mean, to me, I have to put.
It's one of those 3 seniors:
Tanner Groves, Sherfield, or Hill, just because they are seniors and. The consistency from those 3, none of them were that consistent. I mean, Hill is a great defender, rebounder, but we all know in the offseason what Hill was talking about was being a scorer and providing more
and it's
on the offensive end.
And it's not like you can't score. Look at the Bama game. Part of the reason they killed Bama was because they got the performance. I think it was like 90, 80 points from those 3. And I mean, was that the only game those three actually did much? I mean, TCU, Tanner and Grant combined for like 60, but I mean, they weren't consistent enough to give them a high. I mean, they'd be low
and
down.
Definitely not consistent enough in those close games where you got to win. You got to come through at the end, and they just couldn't hit one down the stretch. So
I mean, in conclusion, I mean, we mentioned it. There's a couple guys. I think Uzan, Owe, you have to be excited about them, and I think you throw Bijan Cortez in there. And then the two recruits they're bringing in, you got to be excited about that. They have the pieces, but you got to get more pieces in the portal. And
if he does not make the tournament next year, he's going to be he needs to be fired.
And I would agree. It wouldn't work out. I do think, I mean, it all depends on what they do in the transfer portal, in my opinion. So report card wise, I mean, it's just
you got to be an A in the portal, period. So
you have to. And I mean, the season closed out last night with what? They scored 49, 47 points. I mean, first game and the last game, 52 and 49 or whatever. So
and got beat by little brother 3 times.
3 times, which is just,
and none of them were close.
No, and they emptied their bench in every single one of them, I think.
Yeah.
So I mean, just a disappointing season. I know everyone hopes next year will be better, and I think you'll get a pretty good sense of what that'll be like just based on what they do in the coming months. They're going to have to be aggressive. They're going to have to overload with guys from the portal, and they're going to have to retain the guys they need to retain. So, I mean, be interested to see if there's any coaching staff changes as far as assistants, because last year, I think they lost 2 or 3. No, they lost 3 last year. So it'll be interesting. But we just wanted to come on here and give a little, I don't know, what would you call it? Like recap of
the season and look towards the future
for the future. So
thanks for listening, guys. Make sure and subscribe, hit the subscribe button.
Check out Surge Sports Network.
Yep.
Peace.
All right, Boomer.